All right. Good morning, all. It seems to be May 30th, 2023, Tuesday. Although those in Northern California cannot tell. My wife said she thinks she's experiencing seasonal affective disorder in May, which is pretty bad. That's about the size of it. All right. So we're going to sit for about 20 minutes and then going to continue reading a bit from my Buddhism 12-step workbook. So settling into your meditation posture. So if you are sitting, you want to be upright and balanced. We want the spine to be able to move energy through the body as it naturally does when there's a good posture. You can close your eyes or just lower your gaze if you're more comfortable having your eyes open. If you're lying down, I recommend that you do keep your eyes open to avoid drowsiness. And then taking a couple minutes just to establish awareness of the body, just in a general sense. Feeling how you're holding the body. Feeling any particular points of sensation, discomfort, or pleasurable feelings. Letting the body soften. Just a sense of releasing tension throughout the body. A letting go. And bringing the attention to the breath in the body. Feeling how the body moves with the breath, rising and falling, the expansion, contraction. The sensations, you might feel the sensations at the nostrils, the touch of air coming in and out. And so this connecting with the body and the breath is connecting you to the present moment. And as we try to stay with that experience of breath and presence, can often feel that we're being pulled away or swept away by thoughts and energies. And so there's a process of just coming back whenever we get lost or distracted, using the breath as our anchor to the present moment. Each time we meditate, it's a unique experience, sometimes easeful and pleasant, sometimes more a struggle, more of a challenge. Uh, It's best if we can just accept whatever is arising, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And rather than judging the quality of our experience, examining its nature, just feeling it, being with it. This is counter to the natural tendency to control, to want to impose our will on our experience. And this is the letting go that's at the heart of practice. But even as we let go, there is a certain persistence, determination that carries us. We are making an effort. It's just not a striving effort or an ego-driven effort. The effort to let go in itself embodies this paradox. But this points to the art, the art of practice, the art of meditation, the subtle relationship between effort and letting go. We can only understand this through our own practice, our own experimentation. Okay. Um, Welcome again, everyone. People arrived during the silent part of the meditation, so I hope that that was not, it wasn't any instruction anyway, but who needs instruction? That's overrated. I just kind of talk to set the mood, really, create a vibe. You don't really need to hear the words. No, it's true. Come on. Um, anyway, for those who have not been here lately or at all, and not on the mailing list, I did just send out an email yesterday about this upcoming course, Buddhism and the 12 Steps. I'm gonna go through in 8 weeks with folks. So that'll show up in the chat when Angela gets around to it. She's got a lot to do there. So I've been, over these years, since we started having Zoom classes, I've used different books just to do these classes, just to sort of get a topic going. So this is, I've been working with my Buddhism and the 12 Steps workbook, and really pretty much still in the opening parts of the book. Excuse me. And I'm actually right in the middle of a section that's just called Mindfulness Meditation. So before the book gets into the steps, there's a fairly lengthy bunch of introductory teachings. So I guess on Friday I was reading from this, and I stopped. I think I know where I stopped, somewhere around the bottom of page 27. So I'm going to pick it up there. Most people spend their waking hours thinking about the future or the past. We worry and plan and fantasize. We remember, regret, and indulge in nostalgia. We calculate, analyze, and criticize. Mindfulness brings our attention into the present, into direct experience of what is, instead of staying lost in our thoughts. Mindfulness is getting at a simpler way of being alive, something more essential. And I like that idea. That's something that I often reflect on. Maybe, well, I'll keep reading because I might say what I'm thinking is in the book. So mindfulness isn't just concentrating on something. That's a part of meditation, but mindfulness means that we are aware of what we are aware of. This can sound strange, and really it can only be understood experientially. Mindfulness is a natural capacity in the human mind. And when we come to understand what it is and how to access it, it doesn't seem strange at all. In fact, when we begin to experience life in this way, the more common way of living can begin to look kind of strange instead. A couple comments, if I may. On that last line, the more common way of living can begin to look kind of strange instead. My teacher, Lee Brasington, when you're on retreat with him and he talks about the end of the retreat and going back to your life, he says, back in the unreal world, which is just his play on the fact that people sort of think of being on retreat as unreal. But his point being actually being on retreat is more real. I'll also say in a more serious point, and this sort of came up when I was looking this over this morning, where I say mindfulness isn't just concentrating on something. further, something that sort of came up for me, I think, in the writing about Anapanasati Sutta, that when in ordinary behavior, when we concentrate on something, it's because we're trying to focus on that thing. We're focusing on a task or some experience. And it's what's important is the object itself, the object that we're meditating on. I'm sorry, what we're concentrating on. This is not in meditation. So for instance, if you're, playing music, you're concentrating on the music and the sound, and your body connecting to the instrument. If you're writing computer code, you're very concentrated on the code and writing the things accurately that you want to write as code. So any ordinary concentration is about the object itself. It's about concentrating on the object. One of the unique things about meditation, and particularly Buddhist meditation, is that the object of concentration is not important. We aren't particularly interested in anything about that object. What we're really trying to do is create a mind state. It's the mind state of what we call concentration, but more, in Pali and Sanskrit, samadhi. This mind state is what we're trying to cultivate, not to really wow, I really understand my breath. I really am breathing in and breathing out. I'm doing it really well. It's nothing. The breath is insignificant in this, by and large. It's the mind state itself. So that's one thing that I think is maybe can get lost in the process. But I also think we kind of intuitively know that when we're trying to meditate, because most of us, I think most people, when they kind of define the quality of the meditation, like it was a good meditation or a bad one, which obviously it's not a good way of characterizing them anyway, but our minds will do something like that. That definition is very much based upon the mind state that we attain in the meditation, right? It's not like, wow, I really felt my breath. It was really great. I had a great meditation. I just could just so feel the breath. No, it's the mind state we get into through that concentration. We go, oh, that was very pleasant, or the mind state is very distracted and unpleasant. So just to point to that, I think it's an interesting thought, because it really does point to the distinction between the ordinary concept of concentration and what concentration means in meditation. So thank you very much. It only took me 40 years of practice to realize that. So now you can skip that and jump right to the present. Okay. Meditation itself, and picking up on page 28, halfway down, meditation itself is a great tool in the recovery process. Certainly the early stages of recovery are stressful, and having a way to bring more calm and relaxation into our lives is very helpful. But even for the person with long-term recovery, having a practice that helps manage stress is vital. Many addicts tend to take on stress easily or react poorly to life's challenges. Having a way to work with these tendencies enhances the quality of life and reduces the likelihood of relapse. That's why step 11, which suggests we meditate, is so vital to any ongoing 12-step program. Mindfulness meditation offers even more than stress reduction, though. For one, it gives insight into our own minds, helping us to see the habitual thought patterns and emotional reactions that are at the root of our addiction. As we start to understand ourselves more clearly, we become less the victim of those destructive qualities, more able to let go of negative and distorted views of ourselves and of the world. In 12-step parlance, We can call this a kind of meditative inventory, a check on ourselves and our perception of reality. That's, a paragraph worth reflecting on, right? Insight into our own minds, helping us to see habitual thought patterns and emotional reactions that are at the root of our addiction. This is, what I talk about this so much, right? And just the idea that we just start to see what we're thinking, and what we are thinking is a reflection of what we believe very often, or it's an expression of our beliefs. I am like this. You are like that. The world is this. And that's a story we're creating for ourselves. And sometimes it's helpful and accurate, and sometimes it's really unhelpful and distorted and diluted, And so, part of the process of mindfulness meditation is not just letting go of the thoughts, but taking a look at the thoughts. And this is something, people ask about when I talk about this, and it is a little bit tricky to talk about. I would say generally, actually, I'll say that more generally, that kind of noticing of thoughts in terms of like literally, oh, that thought is telling me something that's really a lie, is more of a just mindfulness rather than a mindfulness meditation experience. So my tendency is much more to catch those thoughts in daily life. But it's useful as well in meditation to do it. And so there's this kind of dance or rhythm, and dancing, of course, is done to a rhythm. So I guess that makes sense, that we do when we're trying to work with this kind of reflection. So first of all, I'll say, when you're practicing meditation, it's not that every time you have a thought, you stop and go, what was that thought? Is that true? What am I going to do with that? Because there's too much typically going through our minds to really catch all that. And the first thing we're trying to train ourselves, we could say there are sort of developmental processes in this practice. The first thing we're trying to teach ourselves is to just let go of thinking, right? This is a big step in our practice. So because we tend to think so much, if we can just learn to stop, to intervene in the thought, which is really what letting go means, to intervene and stop thinking and just come back to the breath, that's a really useful training in it. And I'd say it's the foundation training in this practice. But we can also then, when there are persistent thoughts or loud thoughts or extreme thoughts, things that really like, what the hell is going on in my mind kind of thoughts, we can then turn toward the thought itself. And just, it's not that we're going to sit there and go, what does that mean? Was it the way my mother treated me and blah, blah. No, you just kind of look at it, go, oh, what is that? And it very often it'll tell you, it's like, as soon as you shed light on the madness of your own thought and the absurdity of it, it's pretty apparent. Like, well, that's really wild that I'm thinking that about myself. Usually it's thinking something about yourself, right? Or it might be, wow, I really am angry with that person. Or, oh, I really am embarrassed about that. Whatever, just in that moment, just turning toward it in that you can see it. And then you don't have to do anything more with it at that point. And just come back to your breath and just, you've seen something. We can call that an insight if you like. Oh, you understand something. You don't have to do anything with it because it's now like there in your mind. It's an understanding, and something has been seen. And once something has been seen, it makes a kind of imprint on your mind that's easy to recollect, and starts to patterns reveal themselves, right? You don't have to go chasing after the patterns. Once you've noticed like several things that are kind of related, the pattern, like, oh yeah, that's obvious. Look, of course I know that. And it might be something that you do sort of already know about yourself, or sense about yourself, or that someone has said to you about you, but it just becomes like, oh, right, it just becomes very clear in this kind of process. So just trying to give some idea and sort of sense of how to work with this process so that it doesn't become a psychotherapy and down the rabbit hole of like the past and what we call proliferation, the great Pali word papancha, where you have a thought and then blah, 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 you just go off, right? I mean, you're going to do that anyway. So, it's not like my telling you not to do it's going to help, but to recognize that that's not what this is about. This is not about figuring stuff out in some lengthy, ruminative process. It's about like seeing stuff. We call it insight meditation, right? You just see stuff, and you don't need to think about it particularly. It's that really that knowing that we all have. Okay, that was on that paragraph. Moving on, I'm on page 29, the top now. It says, further. So further than what? As we understand, let me read a little bit of the last sentence of the former paragraph. As we start to understand ourselves more clearly, we become less the victim of those destructive qualities, more able to let go of negative and distorted views of ourselves and of the world. In 12-step parlance, we can call this a kind of meditative inventory, a check on ourselves and our perception of reality. Further, mindfulness meditation can connect us to a feeling of something greater, sense of meaning and purpose in our lives. If we are willing to do the regular work of meditation, we begin to have a spiritual experience that gives us a feeling of our own wholeness, as well as a sense of the preciousness of life and the world around us. This deeper connection is one of the most powerful effects of meditation. Many people in recovery hunger for this connection and depend on their meditation practice to instill their lives with meaning. While all of this is possible with mindfulness meditation, the practice itself works with the most basic elements of our human experience, just those things that are happening to us moment to moment in our body and mind. Rather than aiming for lofty experiences, mindfulness practice directs us to these simple elements of life, letting their meaning and beauty reveal themselves over time. I'm going to take you through different ways that we can be mindful. We start by applying these forms of attention in our formal meditation practice, but ultimately want to bring this kind of attention to all our activities. For each of these approaches, I'll offer an introductory meditation. So then I kind of go into a kind of sideways look at the sort of the four foundations of mindfulness. Not exactly, but so the one other thing that struck me when I was looking at this earlier today was that I did leave out something pretty significant in this description of mindfulness meditation and the things that we work with in that practice. And that is the more universal insights that Buddhist meditation is meant to cultivate and reveal, and those are particularly, the sort of classic example of that is what's called the three characteristics of existence: anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanence, suffering, and not self. So, without getting into a lengthy dissertation on each of these, just to say that the idea of having insight on that level is that it's not about me or my thoughts or my mind or my body, but rather about seeing the universality of experience, the universality of everything is impermanent, that things are unsatisfactory, that because everything is impermanent, nothing can be sort of ultimately satisfactory, is it will inevitably change. And so that's dukkha. It's unsatisfactoriness makes it unpleasant on some level. And then the not self or corelessness, because everything is constantly changing, there's no solid thing we can point to as the core of anyone or anything. And seeing these things has nothing to do with my story, nothing to do with my emotions, personal emotions or thoughts, or my life. It's seeing something that's just about reality, and so it's that those insights are impersonal, and they help us to see our experience in less personal terms. And that's one of the values of taking in those insights, is that when we look at all this stuff that I was talking about in the mind, in the body, all our experiences, we can also remember, oh, this is all impermanent, and this isn't, I don't have to take it personally. It's not really about me. Oh, it's unsatisfactory. I'm not going to achieve some, moment of perfect joy that's just going to live forever, or pleasure. And conversely, I'm not going to experience, if I'm having pain, this won't last forever either. And so it's a vital, I'll say advanced step. It doesn't take any particular great advancement, but it's a step out of, and I would say beyond, just the self-examination. Oh, I'm seeing my mental habits or my mental behaviors or my habitual emotional reactions. I'm seeing things in this more universal way. And that's very freeing in itself, because of the impersonality of it. It's interesting that people so often struggle with and try to figure out, explain not self to me, or I don't understand. What does that mean? How can there, but when people have a feeling of not identifying with things, or when they don't take things personally, they are really happy, and so you don't have to believe in it, but it's a really helpful thing to helpful lens through which to see your experience, because you don't tend to get nearly upset when you don't take things personally. And so whether you believe there's a self or not, it's a good idea to pretend there is no self. And then you're like, hey, whatever, I'm not bothered because I don't exist. No. So anyway, there's a few thoughts to pass on this morning. I hope that's helpful. It's kind of fun for me. Guess you can tell when I'm having fun because I'm laughing at myself. And I'm laughing at reality, better than crying, I suppose. So somehow I've managed to leave some time. I usually fill it up with my rambling, but there is some time for people to participate. So if anybody would like to join in, say anything, make a comment, ask a question, please, you can officially raise your hand with the, raise hand function, or you can physically raise your hand and hope that I see you. Oh, you can just unmute and start talking. What landed? What stayed with you? My theory is that people only ever remember one thing from a Dharma talk. So what's the one thing you? I hope there's one thing. I hope it's not like
hand raised.
Oh yeah, there you go, Gail. Hi. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Kevin. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to read you something that when I first read your book, this was in 2018. I made a note at the bottom of the page you just wrote, that we just read, and it said, "I'm reading these pages and my mind wanders to the cats, grapes, hostas, the sound of the creek, the trash truck, the birds, the desire to go make bacon and eggs." And this is where I'm glad I wrote that. This is where I was 5 years ago or 6 years ago when I was first learning your techniques on mindfulness. And to suggest, when you said, we don't need to understand it, I did need Debbie Darren's kind of simplification, thanks Debbie, of the 3 Ps for the the 3 elements of characteristics for the, it's not perfect, although it really is, but I mean, it feels like it's not perfect, that it's not permanent. And the one that I use the most in my life now, it's not personal. Yeah. So, I mean, because I don't understand what non-self means, but I know what not personal means.
Yeah.
So that really has helped a lot. And that's simple understanding. But I just thought it was really funny that when I first read this, before I had any insight on what meditative practices were, my mind, just reading a page, was all over the place. I'm much better at being able to focus at reading now. Thank you.
That's great, Gail. Thank you. But I think it's great that you were already learning to look at your own mind, right? And that's what's there, that you're seeing, and that you're seeing into your own mind, and that's the starting point. And because before that, right, before we learn to do that, their mind is doing all that, and we don't even know it's happening, and that means we're really just at the mercy of what arises in our minds. And boy, that's why the world is what the world is. Because of human minds. I mean, that's why the human world is the human world. So yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's great. And thanks, Debbie. That's a really good, what do we call it? Mnemonic device. Yes. I think there was a band back in the 80s called the Mnemonic Devices. Anyway. And so a couple more minutes. Angela, you're going to stop the recording then at 11. Yeah, Angela has to leave at 11. So other thoughts or comments? I know it's hard to speak up. Hey, Julie, go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. It's lovely to be here with you. Just an experience that I've had in the last couple of weeks, which is really wonderful. And that is, I'm in and an adult children group, and we're working the steps. And at the beginning, it was, and we're not very far along, we're going very slowly. But at the beginning, it was kind of like, this is what my mother did, this is what my father did, this is what they said to me, this was what happened to me, and this is my response. And now it's a lot less about what mom and dad or any individual person did or said to me. It's more of, oh, this is what it's like to be in the ocean of my father's ancestry and my mother's ancestry. It's not about the waves crashing. It's not about the individual waves crashing. It's like, oh, this is what it is. Because in that ocean is all kinds of previous ancestral intergenerational trauma. And it's not about me. It's not a personal, they attacked me, they were unskillful with me, the unhealthy family dynamic was with me. It was just like, oh, this is what it is to be a drop in that ocean. And at first I thought, oh, this is, I'm in denial, or I'm repressing. So I run it by my therapist, and she said, no, that's not, I am processing. And so that less personal, this more kind of like ancestral, intergenerational stuff, and just to be a drop in that ocean instead of being crushed by all the waves has been really freeing in a lot of ways. And it certainly has opened me up. It keeps opening up my compassion.
Yeah.
So thank you.
That's great, Julie. Thank you. That's I think you're exactly right. Like anything that kind of takes us out of the self view is really, it's freeing, and it's true, and there's not just one truth. There is a truth that there's this self experience, the experience of a self. And then there's, as you talk about, being part of a intergenerational experience. We have some friends over last week, and one who's a drug and alcohol counselor, and he was talking about how he really he prefers to think of addiction as not a personal thing, but actually something that's like a social disease, in a way. And that's another way, right? That's not even about your family, but that's about the society you live in and the culture you live in. And we know, like, all the pressures that trigger people into behaviors that are harmful for themselves, that aren't personal, that they don't, that they're not even like, they're not even originating within the individual, but they are really originating outside and kind of then influencing the individual. And you have things like when one person at a high school commits suicide, very often there's others that then commit suicide, and it just like the ways that we're influenced by, and obviously that's like a negative, and there can be very positive things too. It's that can manifest too. We see someone doing service and helping, and we think about joining in and being part of service. So yeah, I think any way we can step away from this obsession with self, and obviously that's the 12-step literature says that, and Buddhism says that, is like, self-centeredness was the problem, and the anonymity is the spiritual foundation. Anonymity, which is letting go of identity and attachment to self and individuality. All of these things are important. At the same time, we need to have a healthy self, which is like the the conundrum we're faced with, another of the classic paradoxes of spiritual practice. It was put by, can't think of the name of the person who said it, but what you need to have a healthy self before you can let go of self. So because otherwise we wind up with spiritual bypassing. And so I'm sort of throwing out a lot of last minute ideas here, but so thank you all for coming and being part of this. And so maybe as a reflection this week, it can be on self. We seem to have arrived at that. And what's your relationship to that? And how do you, how is that? What are the ways in which self identity are creating problems in your life, and what are the ways that it's useful and important for you? So I'll offer that as a reflection for the next few days, and I will be back again on Friday evening. So may you all be safe and well. I will see you soon.